power isn't granted, it's seized. While generations of philosophers have long debated how the world should be, one man took a starkly different approach. He asked how it actually works. Niccolo Machiavelli, in his infamous The Prince, didn't sugarcoat the reality of power. He didn't write about lofty ideals or moral perfection. Instead, he showed us the raw, unvarnished truth of human nature and the cold mechanics of control. His insights were so unsettling that his name became synonymous with ruthlessness and cunning. Yet centuries later, his principles still shape the corridors of politics, business, and even our personal relationships. Machiavelli didn't just uncover the methods by which rulers keep their thrones. He revealed how power works on a deeper psychological level, tapping into the fears, desires, and weaknesses that define us all. He understood that to truly influence, you must understand not just what people believe, but what drives them at their core. Today we'll delve into the forbidden wisdom Machiavelli uncovered, the dark truths about power, control, and human nature that society often refuses to confront. From his lessons in manipulation to his views on leadership, we'll explore how his work continues to shape the decisions made at the highest levels of society, and how it's influencing your world today. Machiavelli's perspective on human nature challenges the idealism that underpins many of Western philosophical traditions. While thinkers like Plato and Rousseau envisioned humans as rational beings, capable of rising above their base desires, Niccolo Machiavelli took a more cynical, and to many, unsettling view. For him, human beings are not motivated by virtue or reason, but by self-interest and fear. As he famously observed, humans are driven by self-interest and fear, not abstract principles or distant consequences. This observation was not merely a critique of morality, but a deep analysis of the true forces that shape human behavior. Machiavelli understood that human actions are often dominated by immediate needs, concerns, and fears. He recognized that people are not constantly guided by abstract principles of justice or long-term thinking. Instead, the need for survival, comfort, and social status typically governs their behavior. People choose self-preservation over principle and immediate benefits over long-term rewards, Machiavelli remarked, capturing the essence of his view on human nature. This is not a cynicism aimed at degrading humanity, but a sharp recognition of its basic instincts. When faced with a choice, people often choose what is easiest, safest, and most immediately gratifying, whether or not it aligns with ethical ideals or future benefits. Consider the modern world for a moment. In a corporate boardroom, decisions are often not made based on what is morally best for the long-term future, but on immediate financial gain, personal advantage, or the preservation of status. How many times do we see a politician make a decision that compromises long-term sustainability in favor of immediate popularity? Machiavelli's insight illuminates a fundamental truth about human nature. We often act out of self-preservation, driven by the impulse to survive or prosper in the short term, even at the cost of more virtuous or long-term considerations. This dynamic, so familiar in the public realm, plays out in personal relationships as well. People's decisions in friendships, marriages, and work relationships are often shaped by what benefits them now: emotional security, social capital, or simple comfort. This leads to a deeper realization. Humans are far more predictable than we like to admit. Much of human behavior, despite its seeming complexity, can be traced back to these primal needs and fears. It's not that humans are inherently corrupt, but that the motivations underlying their decisions are often primal, immediate, and grounded in the body's need for self-preservation. Think about it. A friend may vow to always be there for you, but in moments of true hardship, they may turn away if offering support becomes too costly. A colleague may praise your work publicly, but behind the scenes, they are plotting their own advancement. These actions are not necessarily born of malice, but from the instinct to preserve one's own well-being. Machiavelli's core insight, that self-preservation and immediate benefit tend to outweigh abstract principles, brings him into sharp contrast with many classical philosophers. For thinkers like Immanuel Kant, human beings possess an intrinsic moral duty and are capable of rational thought that guides them toward the greater good. Plato's ideal society envisioned philosopher kings who would rule with wisdom, driven by reason, not personal gain. Even Rousseau believed in the inherent goodness of humanity, arguing that civilization corrupts us, pulling us away from our natural state of moral purity. These philosophers, while well-intentioned, held a view of human nature that was ultimately idealistic, one that believed humans could be swayed by reason, cooperation, and justice. Machiavelli, however, saw through these rosy projections. He argued that humans are far more complex and self-interested than these theories suggest. People do not rise above their impulses simply because they are asked to. The rational, virtuous decisions that philosophers like Plato and Kant imagined may be possible under ideal circumstances. But Machiavelli understood that, in reality, people act from fear, self-interest, and the drive for immediate gratification. These forces dominate even the most virtuous individuals when the pressure of the moment is strong enough. He argued that understanding human nature in this way, acknowledging that fear and self-interest are universal motivators, was the key to gaining true power. In philosophical terms, Machiavelli's realism aligns with a more materialist, pragmatic view of human behavior. His observations resonate with the psychological theories of egoism, which suggest that all human actions are motivated by self-interest, even when those actions appear altruistic. Thinkers like Friedrich Nietzsche, who believed that individuals were driven by the will to power, would find common ground with Machiavelli's vision of human behavior. Nietzsche's idea that humans act out of the desire to assert control and dominance over their environment mirrors Machiavelli's notion that people are driven by their immediate needs and fears, often at the expense of higher ideals. Machiavelli's understanding of human nature also speaks to the shadow concept developed by Carl Jung. Jung argued that the unconscious mind houses aspects of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, traits and desires that, when repressed, exert control over our actions. Machiavelli, in his way, recognized that much of human behavior stems from unacknowledged desires, the drive for power, the fear of loss, and the craving for security. The good behavior we often display is, in many cases, a mask for these deeper, unconscious motivations. For Machiavelli, the implications of understanding human nature in this way are profound. Leaders who ignore the primal instincts that drive human behavior do so at their peril. To lead effectively, one must understand the terrain on which human decisions are made: self-interest, fear, and the need for immediate benefits. The most successful leaders are those who understand these motivators and use them to align others' interests with their own. Rather than being guided by lofty ideals, true power comes from understanding the raw forces that drive human behavior and learning how to navigate them. Is it better to be loved or feared? This question lies at the heart of Machiavelli's philosophy on power. His answer, however, is stark and uncomfortable. If one cannot be both, it is far safer to be feared than loved. This assertion challenges the conventional wisdom we hold about leadership and influence. Aren't we conditioned to believe that the best leaders inspire affection and loyalty? Isn't love supposed to be the ultimate bond that secures the devotion of those we lead? Machiavelli doesn't deny that love is powerful, but he recognizes a brutal truth about human nature. Love is inherently unstable. People may be loyal and affectionate when it suits them, but when the cost of their loyalty becomes too high or their self-interest is threatened, their devotion wanes. In contrast, fear, particularly the fear of consequences, is more reliable. Fear can be manipulated and maintained through consistent, predictable actions. While love can be fleeting, fear remains a constant motivator, something that, once established, cannot be so easily abandoned. Machiavelli's principle isn't just relevant in the world of kings and emperors. It applies to leadership, relationships, and social groups. In the workplace, for example, a boss who is liked by their employees may foster a pleasant environment, but it's often the fear of negative consequences, like losing a job, facing demotion, or missing out on a promotion, that keeps workers aligned with the company's goals. The pressure to conform to expectations often arises not from affection, but from the fear of failure or loss. In personal relationships, fear also plays a role. People may stay loyal to a partner, not only because of love, but because of the fear of emotional pain, loss of security, or social consequences. These fears shape behavior far more consistently than fleeting affection. People may not always act out of love, but they will often act out of fear of losing something valuable. In social dynamics, we often see this dynamic in groups. Leaders or dominant figures wield influence not just by being loved, but by cultivating fear. Fear of rejection, exclusion, or social stigma. The constant undercurrent of fear often ensures compliance and alignment, while the more transient nature of love can leave room for rebellion and disloyalty. Why does fear provide more consistent control than love? It comes down to human psychology. Love, while powerful, is vulnerable to change. It depends on a mutual exchange of needs and desires, and when those needs are no longer met, affection fades. Fear, however, is not dependent on mutual affection. It is based on the avoidance of negative consequences. Once established, fear becomes a constant factor in decision-making. People may stop loving a leader, but they will rarely stop fearing them, especially when there are clear and unavoidable repercussions. This concept aligns with the existentialist philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre, who argued that human beings are driven by a need to assert their freedom and avoid suffering. Fear, as Sartre might suggest, forces individuals to confront the limits of their freedom and take action to avoid negative outcomes. Unlike love, which can be unreliable and emotionally driven, fear is linked to survival. It's pragmatic, unyielding, and deeply ingrained in human behavior. Machiavelli's insight about fear over love can be observed in modern leadership and politics. Take Steve Jobs, for example. While his leadership style was often harsh and demanding, it was precisely his ability to instill a sense of fear of failure, fear of not meeting expectations, that drove his team to produce groundbreaking products. Jobs didn't lead through affection. He led through the pressure of perfection and the fear of being left behind. In politics, leaders like Vladimir Putin maintain their power through fear, not just of physical violence, but the fear of exclusion, punishment, and social rejection. The loyalty he commands is based on the fear of what would happen if that loyalty were broken, whether it's career destruction, imprisonment, or worse. While Putin may enjoy a degree of admiration from his supporters, it's the underlying fear of consequence that secures his grip on power. Even in corporate settings, fear plays a critical role in maintaining leadership control. The fear of job loss or economic instability keeps employees aligned with corporate directives, often more effectively than any form of affection or moral appeal. Leaders who understand this can create environments where fear of failure, fear of loss, and fear of consequences become the primary drivers of compliance and loyalty. Machiavelli's assertion isn't a call for cruelty, but a recognition of human nature as it truly is. Love may inspire temporary devotion, but fear, when properly managed, provides a more reliable, consistent foundation for control. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This quote encapsulates the essence of Machiavelli's understanding of power. Perception is more influential than reality. In his view, the world is a stage, and people are actors. What matters is not who you truly are, but how you appear to others. In politics, leadership, and social interactions, the image you project can determine your success far more than your inner virtues. Machiavelli recognized that people are inherently superficial. They judge based on appearances rather than substance. His advice to rulers was clear. Manage your image carefully. The true nature of your character doesn't matter if it isn't reflected in the image you present. Public perception, shaped by carefully curated appearances, is often the determining factor in whether people follow you or resist you. As much as we may want to be seen for our true qualities, it's how we appear that shapes how we are treated and how much power we hold. Machiavelli didn't suggest that leaders should be virtuous in every aspect of their lives. Instead, he recommended selective virtue, the art of appearing virtuous when it serves you. Leaders, he argued, should appear merciful, just, and honest when public opinion demands it. But when circumstances call for it, they should be willing to act in ways that may not align with these virtues. This selective approach to virtue allows leaders to maintain power without being bound by a rigid moral code. The key insight here is that a leader doesn't have to be virtuous all the time, just often enough to maintain a positive public image. Machiavelli understood that a ruler's ability to control their image was far more important than consistently adhering to ethical ideals. To maintain control, a leader must appear virtuous when the situation requires it, yet be flexible enough to abandon those virtues when they no longer serve their interests. In this way, the appearance of virtue becomes a tool of power rather than a measure of true moral character. Machiavelli also recognized the power of symbolic action. Leaders can gain more influence through a few visible acts of virtue than through consistent but unnoticed behavior. The public is often swayed not by long-term, uncelebrated actions, but by grand gestures that are visible and impactful. A ruler who makes a dramatic show of mercy or generosity can enhance their image far more than one who quietly embodies these virtues without public recognition. This concept is alive in modern politics and business, where high-profile actions, like a public visit to a disaster area or a highly publicized donation to charity, often garner more praise than consistent, behind-the-scenes efforts. Symbolic acts can serve to solidify a leader's public image, reinforcing their authority and attracting support, even if their private actions do not always match the public persona. In addition to symbolic acts, controlling information is a powerful tool for shaping perception. Machiavelli understood that information is power, and those who control what others know control the narrative. In his time, rulers and leaders carefully curated the information that reached their subjects to maintain an image of strength and righteousness. In modern society, this practice is more relevant than ever, as media and social platforms allow leaders to shape their public image more effectively than ever before. Leaders can selectively release information to bolster their reputation or obscure their faults. By controlling what the public sees and hears, they can craft a narrative that aligns with their goals. This concept of information control is visible in modern politics, where politicians use strategic leaks or timing of announcements to control how they are perceived. In business, companies carefully manage their PR to ensure that only the most flattering aspects of their operations are highlighted. In both cases, the leaders are using information to shape perception, proving Machiavelli's timeless insight that appearances matter more than reality. Machiavelli's teachings on perception management and selective virtue remain deeply relevant today. The power of image, the art of symbolic actions, and the control of information all continue to be key strategies for those who seek to maintain power. Whether in politics, business, or personal relationships, the gap between what we appear to be and what we really are will always be a battleground for control. One of the most potent tools in Machiavelli's political toolbox is strategic generosity. He understood that generosity, when used correctly, can create lasting loyalty and dependence. The key to this tactic is not in giving out of genuine kindness, but in making sure that the benefits you provide are both visible and meaningful to those who receive them. Generosity, when it's clearly attributed to you, becomes a powerful tool of influence. When a ruler, leader, or employer makes their generosity known, whether it's through lavish gifts, public acts of charity, or material rewards, they don't just buy affection. They establish a dynamic where those who benefit are indebted to them. The act of providing benefits is not just about making others feel good. It's about ensuring that those who receive your generosity feel a sense of dependence. When someone receives something from you, especially in a visible and public way, they are subtly bound to you. They become aware that their position, wealth, or comfort is linked to your favor. This dynamic turns the recipient into a loyal ally, as their well-being becomes tied to your continued goodwill. What's more, they may even feel compelled to defend or uphold your authority, knowing that their benefits are directly tied to your success. In this way, strategic generosity is not just about charity. It's about cultivating dependency and loyalty that solidifies your power. Another powerful tool in Machiavelli's toolbox is calculated mercy. Machiavelli understood the importance of knowing when to show mercy, and more importantly, when to withhold it. Leaders, he argued, should be cautious with their forgiveness, recognizing that full reconciliation is sometimes necessary, but partial forgiveness can sow discord and weaken authority. Machiavelli suggested that leaders should either forgive completely or not at all. Half measures, punishing a person for their transgression but allowing them to remain in a diminished position, often lead to resentment and a desire for revenge. By fully reconciling with someone who has wronged you, you transform them into a loyal supporter, often more committed because they know that their past mistakes have been forgiven and they now owe you their allegiance. On the other hand, if you fail to fully forgive, the person may harbor bitterness and look for ways to undermine your rule. In this way, calculated mercy becomes a tool not just for resolving conflict, but for strengthening control. By determining who deserves full forgiveness and who should be shown no mercy, leaders can consolidate power and solidify their hold over both allies and enemies. One of the most surprising tactics in Machiavelli's toolbox is the idea of manufacturing a crisis. At first glance, it seems counterintuitive. Why would a leader want to create chaos or instability? But Machiavelli recognized that crises offer leaders a unique opportunity to consolidate power and reinforce their position. A crisis allows a ruler to assume control of the situation, positioning themselves as the sole authority capable of solving the problem. In times of crisis, people look to their leaders for guidance, protection, and solutions. If a ruler is able to respond effectively and decisively, they can win the loyalty of their followers and disarm any critics. Furthermore, crises often create a sense of urgency that forces people to accept drastic measures they might otherwise resist. Policies or decisions that might seem harsh or extreme in normal circumstances are often accepted during times of uncertainty. This principle can be seen in both historical and modern contexts. Governments and corporations often use crises, whether real or artificially created, to push through reforms, policies, or control measures that would be difficult to implement during peaceful times. The final tactic in Machiavelli's toolbox is predictive consistency. Machiavelli understood that in order to maintain power, a leader must establish a track record of reliability and competence. People are far more likely to follow someone who consistently delivers on their promises and demonstrates competence over time. A leader who is seen as unpredictable or who fails to meet expectations will quickly lose the trust of their followers. Predictive consistency is about more than simply making promises. It's about ensuring that you consistently deliver on those promises, building a reputation for reliability. This is the essence of leadership, the ability to predict and control outcomes. When people believe that a leader can reliably guide them through uncertain situations, they are more likely to follow that leader, even when the stakes are high. Predictive consistency also works on a psychological level. Humans naturally seek patterns, and once a leader has established a consistent track record, people begin to trust them as a stable force in their lives. This trust creates loyalty, which in turn strengthens the leader's control. In modern business, for example, companies with a reputation for delivering quality products or services consistently enjoy customer loyalty because their clients have come to expect a certain standard. Similarly, political leaders who demonstrate steady leadership during times of crisis gain the trust of their constituents because they show they can handle the unpredictable. In both cases, predictive consistency is the foundation of lasting influence and power. Machiavelli's principles have transcended centuries, adapting seamlessly to the modern world. Today's leaders don't wield power with the brute force of a tyrant. Instead, they exercise subtle control through sophisticated tactics like strategic information sharing and perception management. In the age of social media and 24/7 news cycles, the ability to control the narrative is paramount. Politicians, CEOs, and influencers alike now curate their public image with precision, carefully selecting the information they share to shape their audience's perceptions. For example, leaders use social media to craft an idealized image, sharing carefully constructed stories and visuals designed to evoke trust, empathy, and admiration. What's more important is what they leave out. By selectively revealing details that reinforce their desired narrative, they can create a sense of authenticity, even when the truth is far more complex. Machiavelli's timeless advice is reflected in modern strategies that focus not just on what is true, but on what is perceived to be true. The manipulation of perception has become a highly refined art in the digital age. In the corporate world, brands don't just sell products, they sell identities. Through advertising, branding, and social media campaigns, companies foster a sense of connection with consumers, subtly guiding their decisions without direct coercion. The message isn't always overt. Often, it's the subtext of a commercial, a lifestyle choice projected through an influencer's post, or a carefully staged event that shapes the consumer's emotions. Social media platforms are another prime example of modern Machiavellian tactics. By using algorithms to filter and prioritize content, platforms shape how we see the world, subtly guiding our beliefs, opinions, and decisions. Information is presented to us in ways that reinforce existing biases, creating an echo chamber that makes it harder to break free from pre-existing notions. While users believe they are making independent decisions, their perceptions and preferences are being molded by those who control the platform's algorithm, exemplifying the very tactics Machiavelli warned about, managing perceptions from behind the scenes. The most powerful form of manipulation today is perhaps the one Machiavelli would find most fascinating: meta-manipulation. This tactic involves creating the illusion of free will, while, in reality, controlling the outcomes. Modern leaders, corporations, and media outlets don't just dictate what happens. They create a system where people feel they are making their own choices, even though those choices are subtly constrained. Take the example of political campaigns that frame issues in such a way that voters feel empowered to make their decision. But the truth is, the options presented to them are already structured to lead to a predictable result. Similarly, in marketing, consumers are presented with the illusion of choice. Buy this product, join this service, click on this link. Yet all their choices lead them toward the desired outcome. The tactic here isn't to force decisions, but to subtly guide people toward them without their conscious awareness. They feel in control, but they're not. This kind of manipulation can also be seen in the design of apps and games, where algorithms are engineered to keep users engaged through reward systems. People believe they're making independent choices, but every click and scroll is carefully timed to push them toward specific behaviors, generating profit for the companies behind the apps. These modern Machiavellians understand human psychology and exploit it to the fullest, guiding people's choices while making them feel as though those decisions are entirely their own. In the modern world, Machiavellian tactics have evolved from the harsh control of princes to the subtle manipulation of information, perception, and choice. Leaders and corporations today have learned that direct force is often unnecessary. Instead, by managing what people see, hear, and feel, they can guide behavior and maintain control. Machiavelli's principles, applied with finesse, are not just a relic of the past, They are embedded in the very fabric of our contemporary world. The modern Machiavellian doesn't rule with an iron fist, but with a soft, invisible grip that shapes our perceptions and guides our decisions without us even realizing it. Machiavelli's work often sparks debates about morality. Many see his insights into power, manipulation, and control as inherently corrupting, suggesting that understanding these tactics might lead individuals to use them for selfish gain. After all, if one can understand the mechanics of human behavior, why not use that knowledge to advance one's own interests? However, this interpretation of Machiavelli misses a crucial point. He didn't advocate for manipulation's sake. Instead, he revealed the dynamics that govern human nature and political power. The true question is not whether Machiavelli's tactics are immoral, but how we choose to use them. Understanding manipulation doesn't automatically make one a manipulator. It merely provides the tools to navigate a world that, as Machiavelli saw it, is driven by self-interest and power struggles. Whether we use this knowledge for personal gain or for a greater purpose depends on our own moral compass. Just because one has the power to manipulate doesn't mean they must, and just because they can see the truth behind human behavior doesn't mean they must exploit it. The ethical question, then, is not about the tactics themselves, but about the intent behind their use. Machiavelli's insights are not inherently corrupting. They simply show us the world as it is. His writings are a mirror held up to human nature, reflecting the darker, often uncomfortable truths about power and influence. How we use that knowledge is what truly matters. The choice remains ours. Will we wield this understanding to serve our own interests or to promote the greater good? Power can be used to oppress, but it can also be used to protect and uplift. The challenge lies not in the tools themselves, but in how we choose to employ them. If you enjoyed this philosophical exploration, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more content on psychology, philosophy, and the hidden truths behind power. Stay tuned as we continue to peel back the layers of human behavior and power dynamics, revealing the forces that shape our world.